friends, it's me again. Just wanted to bring you another devotional thought. First of all, just to say thank you to everyone who tuned in on Sunday. Hope that was helpful for you. And that's something that we hope to refine and to make additions to, ideally, as the weeks go on, so that we really are using every opportunity to be as useful as we can to the whole church family. But we're turning back to 1 Peter, which hopefully in the last couple of devotions you've been encouraged by how relevant that is to our situation. Peter writes to Christians in the first century who he describes as those who are strangers in the world, who have been dispersed. These were isolated groups of Christians, and yet he's able to write this letter to them to reassure them that they really are the people of God. They're strangers in the world, but they've been chosen by God. They've received mercy and grace from God. They've received new birth from God. They have received an inheritance from God, which God himself, through Jesus Christ, is keeping safe for them in heaven. And so building on that, we're going to pick up on verse 6 of 1 Peter chapter 1. In all this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honour when Jesus Christ is revealed. Though you have not seen him, you love him. And even though you do not see him now, you believe in him and are filled with an inexpressible and glorious joy, for you are receiving the end result of your faith, the salvation of your souls. Here, Peter recognises that God's people go through trials of all sorts, of varieties, and we know that to be true, don't we? Here he envisages that God's people will be rejoicing even though they are grieved in the face of trials. It's a pretty all-encompassing description Peter gives here, and I think that's helpful for us. We would have been tempted if Peter had just given one specific example of a trial that we'd say, well, because that's not my trial right now, because he hasn't specifically mentioned a coronavirus pandemic, that maybe this doesn't apply. No, he speaks to these isolated Christians and he says that even though you may have to suffer grief in all kinds of trials, you greatly rejoice in your faith. We can be sure that our circumstances aren't the exception here. How can we be sure of that? Well, because Peter reveals to us in these verses that he has a biblical understanding of the relationship that exists between Christian faith and suffering. And the main point he seems to get across in these verses is that trials, they prove the genuineness of faith in Jesus Christ. There's something which is quite logical about that. It's not until our convictions about something are tested that we really can be sure that they hold water. It's not until our faith is put to the test that we find out whether it's more than just a theory in our head or whether it really is something we have built our life upon. How confident are we in Jesus Christ? Well, there's nothing quite like the trials of life and even the trials that we face in our world today to test that. It is well said that faith that cannot be tested is faith that cannot be trusted. And so what Peter reveals to us here is that Christians need not fear trials. They need not fear trials. That's not to say that we seek them, and it's certainly not to say that we enjoy them, but it is to say that genuine faith need not feel threatened by trials. Because we know that trials will only reveal the genuineness of faith in Christ more and more. And this is what Peter understands in verse 7. These various kinds of trials have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, which is of greater worth than gold, may result in praise, glory, and honour when Jesus Christ is revealed. This understanding of the preciousness of faith is key here, isn't it? He sees that our faith is the most precious thing that we can ever have, more precious than gold. What an enduring image that is. In the midst of a global crisis, people are investing their wealth in gold. it still holds up as one of those commodities that is regarded as something that tends to hold its value. It endures. And here, Peter says that even though you have the purest gold, which has been refined and purified multiple times, gold still ultimately is something that just will perish. It doesn't last forever. And so just as you would purify gold, put it through extreme heat to cause its impurities to rise to the surface so that you can remove them, well, Peter says that in trials a similar thing is happening in your faith. Your faith is being purified, it's being strengthened, it is being made more precious, if that's possible. And he says that this purifying is looking towards a specific goal. It is waiting for that day when Jesus Christ is revealed. That's when your faith reaches its climax. That's when your faith produces, through the work of Christ in you, that completed work. And so we see here that being a believer in Jesus Christ is not the promise of your best life now. Instead, it is the promise that the best is yet to come and that it will most certainly come. This is the inheritance that's revealed when Jesus Christ comes. It's our receiving something. This language here of our faith resulting in praise, glory and honour when Jesus is revealed is not so much speaking about the praise, glory and honour that we will give to God, though we will do that, but it is us receiving this great commendation. It is to receive those great welcoming words of Christ, well done, good and faithful servant. And so across our church family, we know that there is a huge diversity of trials that people face. People already enduring difficulties and stresses and anxieties before something like a global pandemic hits. But we know that none of us, in the trials that we face, get to escape this promise that Peter gives to us, that these trials are not a threat, but they are for the building up of Christian faith. We can say that the trials and the difficulties that come in life, they're not meaningless, they're not fruitless, because at the very least, for believers, they drive us back to Jesus Christ again, to find that his promises still stand, his love for us still stands, and that it is the case, as we're tested again, that we find that our only hope in life and in death is that we utterly belong to Jesus Christ. And so I want to encourage you today, as you look at the trials that you face. Maybe that's having children at home all the time. Maybe that's recovering from illness. Maybe that's the fear of contracting illness. Whatever it may be, it's job insecurity. Let those trials produce this fruit in you that Peter speaks of. Look at how he describes these early Christians in verses 8 and 9. Ask God to produce this fruit in your life today, Christian brothers and sisters. Though you have not seen Jesus, you love him. And even though you do not see him now, you believe in him and are filled with an inexpressible and glorious joy.